We are getting closer and closer to an all-out military invasion within Niger, Africa. A lot closer. Consider this. The leaders of Niger, the junta, have just captured and arrested a French government official who works overseas within Niger. He's been captured. We don't know exactly what's going on, but what we do know is that the French are requesting an immediate release of this French official. We also know that the French are not willing to kick their troops out of Niger. They're not willing to take their ambassador out of Niger. And at the end of the day, the French now are being put into a corner. You have one of your government officials who's just been arrested. What do? Are you going to leave him there to rot, or are you going to go out and save him? Also consider this. We have some more breaking news. The country of Benin, Africa, Niger cut ties with them. This is a border country within Niger, and Niger says, look, we just caught you guys putting into practice in law that you are willing to invade our country. So stick with me in this video. We're going to go through all of this, and I'm going to show you, maybe this is not the biggest deal about Benin because they're actually one of the worst militaries in the world. I'll show you that. But again, let's watch this clip.
The French Foreign Ministry has demanded the immediate release of one of its officials detained by security men in the Republic of Niger. The European country stated that on September 8, a French national advisor in Niger was apprehended by the West African country's security forces.
Now, this is important because around September 8th is when we were moving towards a more peaceful resolution. The people of Niger were protesting a little more peacefully this time. They weren't throwing bricks and stuff, not trying to break windows. And you had the leaders of Niger saying, hey, do not attack the French embassies, do not attack French bases, be peaceful. So now this is an interesting timeline where really the junta were actually capturing French officials.
From the beginning, our embassy has worked to ensure consular protection for our compatriots, the French Foreign Ministry said. The detained official is an advisor to the French people abroad, an elected person who represents French expatriates and collaborates.
Okay, so now this is important. It's also very telling. Understand this. The elected official who's working within Niger, his job is to essentially be an ambassador for French culture, if you will. It's an interesting role. It's not necessarily an ambassador, but he oversees French cultural ties, the French language, stuff like that. Again, this shows how Niger doesn't want anything to do with France. Like this specific role, if you're going to kick out anything French, this is the role to kick out. Even more so maybe over the ambassador.
Closely with the country's embassies and consulates. Reports say there are 442 such advisors globally. Their role is to assist French expats with work, school, social security, and other difficulties. They are chosen for tenure of 6 years.
Again, this role helps French citizens who live abroad, and they pretty much support them and work with them and help them get the help they need in support of the French government overseas.
The relations between Niger and France have collapsed following the removal of President Mohamed Bazoum by General Abdourahmane Tiani-led junta. French authorities were accused by the junta of supporting the threat by the ECOWAS bloc to intervene in Niger as the bloc continues to...
And by the way, like I was talking about before, this peaceful protest, right here is a gate, and over here where my cursor is are the troops of Niger actually stopping the protest from getting too close into a French military base and over into a French embassy. So consider they're trying to do these peaceful protests, and I think Niger is trying to take out the heads of these government officials, the ambassador, now this government official, just trying to kick him out, and eventually everything will fall together. The only issue is that Mohamed Bazoum, the president of Niger, is still captured, and the French are not willing to budge. They want him back, and so does ECOWAS.
To push for full transfer of power to a civilian administration. Last month, Niger's ruling junta ordered police to remove the French ambassador, signaling a further deterioration in relations between France and its former colony. According to Paris, the army officers who took power in Niamey in late July lacked the authority to dismiss the French ambassador.
So that's another really interesting situation where Niger is saying the junta are in charge, the French are saying the president is in charge, and the French are saying, look, if the president says to kick us out, we'll leave. If the junta says to kick us out, we'll leave. So what the junta did was, well, look, if you're not going to listen to us, we'll capture your official, we'll cut the water and electricity to your ambassador, and not only that, we took away the ambassador's immunity within our country. So technically, the ambassador is in a country not legally. The only issue is within the international community, the person who's actually being acknowledged, who has total authoritative power, is the president. So you can see how there's a weird sense of who has power, who doesn't have power. At the end of the day, legally, Mohamed Bazoum does have power, but practically and actually, he has no power considering he's captured right now. The junta in Niger on Tuesday said it would end a military pact with neighboring Benin, accusing it of authorizing the deployment of troops on its territory for a possible military intervention against Niger by the West African Regional Bloc, ECOWAS. And also, please stick with me because we're going to look at the military power of Benin, and it's pretty bad. I'm just going to throw it out there right now. They're actually one of, if not the worst military in the world, technically. The ECOWAS bloc is trying to negotiate with the leaders of the July 26 Niger coup, but has said if diplomatic efforts fail, it's ready to use force as a last resort to restore constitutional order and reverse the putsch. The junta, in a statement read on national television, and said Benin had authorized the deployment of soldiers, mercenaries, and war materials in the context of a possible ECOWAS intervention. So, of course, Niger, being on the defense, is not going to want to work with Benin and want to push Benin away because it's a border region and can be used as an invasion spot to go into Niger. As a result, the new Nigerian authorities decided to renounce the military cooperation agreement with Benin. And this is the bad side of coups. When coups happen, it's a domino effect. Between Mali and Burkina Faso, it goes downhill from there. Now Niger, and it's just going to sweep across all these ECOWAS nations if they don't stand strong together. There is no immediate response from Benin. ECOWAS has not shared any details about possible deployments, and Niger last week said talks with the bloc continued. So that is good that they are at least talking. But it's a very bad sign when the French have government officials being captured, because the French are the ones who are all up in arms and are saying, look, we're ready to go. We're ready to deploy on a moment's notice. It's all up to Mohamed Bazoum. But honestly, what it seems like is that Mohamed Bazoum, if he says anything, he can be in big trouble. So I think he just wants to be really careful because he knows his life is on the line. Now, like I had been saying before, Benin is not the strongest military in the world. In fact, they're ranked 144 out of 145. So they're technically not the worst military in the world, but they're actually the worst military in the world. Let's be honest here. Now, the reason why I'm showing you this chart is to show you how this doesn't really look that significant on paper. Nonetheless, it is very significant because it shows how ECOWAS is willing to work together. Whether you're a country who has the worst military in the world, whether you're a country who actually has one of the best militaries in the world, I won't say one of the best, but a good military in Nigeria, it goes to show that you need to work together or to show compliance amongst ECOWAS. Compliance. When it comes to manpower, I mean, this is crazy. Total population, 13 million, yet you have 5,000 total troops. So that's an odd number. I almost don't know if I believe this, and I've been using this a lot for militaries, and it's been pretty accurate for the most part, but 5,000 military personnel out of 13 million, that's odd. I mean, obviously it's a country that must not deal with a lot, but nonetheless, it's pretty bad. Interesting enough, because Benin is a coastal country, they do have a navy. So that's something Niger doesn't have. So how about that, Niger? But nonetheless, okay, you only have 5,000 active personnel. My main point being is that this is not the biggest hit to Niger, other than the fact that now ECOWAS is being dead serious and they're standing together to fight against Niger. Now, as far as the U.S. military and their involvement with the French, the U.S. military is saying we want nothing to do with the French. We're on our own mission. We're on our own timeline. And this is a good thing because a lot of people have been asking me, well, what about the U.S. military? What is happening? Well, this is what's happening, and this is straight from the Pentagon. The Pentagon had moved troops out of the capital, and they did it for good reason, because there is a threat where something could happen, not necessarily to the United States, but it could become collateral damage because of the French.
What changed that the U.S. decided to move personnel and equipment? If there's no perceived threat or no threat to U.S. troops, what What prompted 6 weeks after the democratically elected government was overthrown, the U.S. to move to make this decision?
It was, again, just out of an abundance of caution. We felt that because our force posture is not changing within the country, but we felt that it just out of an abundance of caution for our personnel and for our assets in the area, that rather than keeping them close in Niamey, that it would be safer to move them out to Airbase 201 in Agadez. And so that's exactly why we took, I would say, prudent military planning to safeguard our U.S. assets and just to protect our U.S. personnel.
Is this tied to the resistance the French are seeing to their forces being there?
There is no tie to this. This is out of a complete abundance of caution. There is no tie to what the French military is doing right now. We are confident that, or we are hopeful that diplomatic talks will continue and that the situation.
Notice she did change what she said. She said we were confident, and then she went to we are hopeful. And what this leaves me to believe is that the Pentagon is always thinking 5 steps ahead, and they're probably assessing this and seeing that the French are not willing to back down, so let's get the hell out of the capital without totally trashing the French and making them look bad.
In Niger will be resolved diplomatically, but right now, out of an abundance of caution, we are just moving our some of our personnel and our assets to Airbase 201.
And this is a good thing, the abundance of caution, because obviously what we saw happen during the Biden administration in Afghanistan, we didn't have enough caution, and there wasn't enough of this abundance of energy to get out of that country as fast as possible, do the right thing. And over here in Niger, they don't want another Afghanistan. So yeah, this is the direction we're moving in within Niger, Africa. The U.S. military staying silent, but they know the French are up to something, which is not good. The French are almost put into the corner now. The move is on them. Are they going to get their guy back, or are they just going to kick everybody out of France in hopes that Niger will release French officials and other French authorities? Because now the French military is still in Niger. We don't know necessarily what they're doing, but we do know they are there. It's 1,500 troops. It's still a lot of troops, and they can still do a lot of damage, but it looks like they are more on the defensive posture to hold French assets, military bases, the ambassador compound, things like that. But what I do find really interesting is that Niger seems to be very patient. They're going after key objectives within Niger that affect the French. They're not necessarily going after ECOWAS, because Niger knows ECOWAS is also suffering, because ECOWAS has sanctions on Niger that's affecting sanctions back in their home territories. Because look, a lot of businessmen, a lot of traders trade into Niger, and now they have no business. So ECOWAS is feeling the hurt. The French are feeling the hurt. And what it really looks like, Niger is not willing to put Mohamed Bazoum back in power. Military intervention is the last answer and the last action. Now, I hope this doesn't happen, but we are getting closer and closer to an all-out military intervention.